One. Hi, everyone. My name is Meg Alexander, and I have the absolute privilege to get to be in conversation today with the amazing Holly Mosley Cooper. Now, before we dive into questions, I just want to say this is a pre-recorded session, so we won't be able to take your questions during today's event, but please feel free to send them over into the group chat there. We'll be collecting them, and there will be Power to Fly team members, hopefully to be able to direct those questions where they need to go. So as we get started today, Holly, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us on today's stage. I'm very excited to get to talk with you, and I'm so happy that you joined us. We're looking forward to hearing a lot about your experience and about how leaders can really better support neurodiverse professionals in remote and hybrid environments. Could you tell us, as a neurodivergent person, what are some of the advantages or disadvantages you find of working remotely?
Working remotely, it was nice because I got a chance at first to set my own schedule, and it was nice not really having to spend the money on gas and lunch, and I didn't have to worry about shopping for lunch foods or spending money on lunch, and it was a 5-minute walk to the kitchen to make lunch.
Right.
Or if I actually felt like I wanted to take a nap during the day, that was nice. So there's that. And
Wasn't that game changing, right? Like the first time I was able to do that in the middle of the day, I felt so like decadent somehow, like I wasn't working right. It was very weird to realize like, oh, I can just lay down for like 10 minutes. It's fine. Nobody's gonna be like mad that my head's on my desk.
yeah, I have some sleep challenges, so it's nice. Coffee isn't always the solution, so when I feel tired, it gives me a chance to lay down. Plus, I have some health challenges. I have a heart condition, so if I get tired, it was nice to be able to take a short nap, a cat nap, and they always were helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of highlights a really good point, which is that, especially when it doesn't just affect neurodivergent individuals, but there's a lot of intersectionalities there, right? You might be neurodivergent and also have additional diagnoses or additional like medical health concerns, physical things. So it is really important to highlight that, when you do have those kind of intersectionalities, it can really complicate the kind of things that you might need that might be really great accommodations to help you do your job, right?
Right, absolutely. I try not to, well, I wouldn't even call it demanding, but it's nice to be able to ask for what you need and to actually get it. So that's definitely helpful. So.
Yeah, 100%. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today and being so transparent. I know that a lot of times it can feel a bit weird trying to talk about stuff like this. I live with bipolar disorder, so I am neurodivergent, but I don't have additional health concerns on top of it. And so it's really, at least for me, it's very interesting to hear how other people with neurodivergence, how they manage their day, why they like to work remote, that kind of thing. Because I only know my experience. So do you think that there was anything that was really a disadvantage to you working remotely as opposed to being in office?
I kind of like that I've gone back to the office now because, I actually get to interact with people because my sons live with me, but they were both working at night at the time. So I hardly ever saw them during the day. They'd be asleep all day. And by the time they got up to go to work, it was half the day was gone. So I didn't really get much interaction. So um, it was nice being able to see them during the day, for however brief it might have been. But it's nice now actually being in an office with other people because I generally don't have trouble getting along with other people. So it's nice to have the camaraderie. And although I work with children, I'm with adults the better part of the day. So it's nice to be able to interact with adults during the day, which is important because I recall when my son was younger, we lived in a place where I didn't really know a lot of people. And my husband was at work all day, and all I had to interact with was an infant and the Teletubbies and Barney. So that was kind of starting to drive me a little nuts. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, one of my best friend just had her first child, and she is absolutely going through stuff like that. And it really, you're right. It is a really good reminder that having having access or having touch points with other people, especially other adults during the day, it is huge. I think I do miss some of that as well. I do miss going into an office and knowing that like the people I worked with were going to be right there, and we could talk, and we could, whatever, all the like interpersonal stuff that goes along with having work relationships. So I do miss that a little bit. But do you feel like there's any of the work from home kind of workarounds that allows you to get that? Like Power to Fly uses the Slack feature in Huddle, or sorry, the Huddle feature in Slack, so that we can like have a quick chat conversation if we want, or we use video calls a lot. So it does feel, even though I've never met the majority of my coworkers, it does feel like I know them, right? Even if they are half a world away.
Yeah.
So I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, when I was working remotely, we did have a meeting at a local hotel that when things had started to open back up. So I actually finally got to meet the people that I had been interacting with over Zoom. So yeah, I did. I did chat with them over Zoom. We did have breakout smaller meetings over Zoom. So that was nice, but I was really I was really over all the Zoom meetings, so it was nice to have the in-person meeting to get a chance to meet everybody. And like I said, now it's being Spectrum, I definitely have to consciously work on my interpersonal skills, but in my head, it's not that I don't. It's just sometimes I don't think about stuff. So remember to say good morning, remember to smile, remember to interact casually, make jokes, or try to be humorous. All these things are going through my head all the time. Things that neurotypical people don't even have to think about. It's just I in my head on my way to work. I'm playing all this in my head, like this is what you need to remember to do. Smile, be cordial. And like I said, it's not that I always felt like I'm a nice person, but especially if I have something that's really important that I have to do, I tend to be kind of laser focused on that. So I don't think about all the other little things that go with being a nice coworker who interacts properly with her bosses and her coworkers. So yeah, that's a thing. Even when we were working remotely, I have to admit I probably might have been a little lax, especially since I wasn't going into an office and actually being around people. It really was a challenge to remember all that when we're doing the Zoom meetings. So yeah.
That makes a ton of sense, right? And it kind of opens up a good point here, which is that there's a lot of that mental energy that neurodiverse people expend, obviously to different degrees depending on what neurodiversity they experience. But you're right. I mean, it's a lot of extra emotional labor that people who are neurotypical don't really think about, right? They don't have to think to themselves like, oh yeah, don't forget, like we're doing this job, we're kicking butt at what we're doing, but also we have to be nice to everyone, or like not even nice. It's like that extra like friendly layer somehow. It feels like you have to do it, right?
Yeah, a lot of people call that masking, but I don't know that it's so much masking as just survival. Because if you don't do those things, you probably won't have your job very long. Because I have to, I love kids. It's not really a problem. I probably have a lot easier time dealing with them than I do the adults. So I have to deal with the
Yeah.
parents. I have to deal with the parents, and I have to deal with the kids. I love the kids, so that's less of an issue for me. But talking to the parents, remembering that they're a little frustrated because we had a lot of turmoil in this position that I undertook because I have the experience, and it's not a hard job. It's just realizing that I'm the new person in this position now. So now all the problems that you were having all fall on me, but I'm working on them and I'm happy to. I don't mind you calling. I'll take your phone calls. We can interact by email, however. But just do understand that I'm just literally started this job. I mean, I was working on it last week a little bit, but I literally just started officially on Monday. So give me a little
Congratulations.
time. Thank you. Thank you. Give me a little
Congratulations.
time. So cause
Yeah.
yeah, I started as a daily substitute in the way they have working in a charter school. So the way they have their system set up, instead of calling substitutes like they do in public school, they had us on campus all the time and filling in whatever role that we needed to do. So now this is a different position, a full-time position. My entire job is dealing with before and after care. So it's
Okay.
almost like running a daycare center in a indirect way, and I've operated a tutoring center for 30 years, so I
Oh, wow.
understand how all that works. But yeah, it's a challenge, and it's we're trying to work out all the bugs, and
Of
things
course.
are running more smoothly now. Like I said, I did start last week a little bit, but I wasn't official yet. So now,
Yeah. Well, and that is also something to keep in mind, right? The fact that things like this, things like, oh, well, we're transitioning this role, or we're trying to change the way we used to do things and we're changing it now. These are tough situations for anyone to navigate, and they can be stressful for anyone who's in that role. But when you add in, somebody who has additional challenges, and, outside of that, like for me, if I was in the middle of a swing and trying to go and step into some role like that, I at least would have a huge extra layer of, concern and worry. And am I going to be good enough? And how am I going to make sure that I do this? And like all that extra pressure that like I put on myself. Do you experience the same thing when it comes to a situation like that?
yes, but I am very, very grateful for YouTube because they have dozens, hundreds, I don't know about thousands, but at least hundreds of videos that help with meditation. So I use meditation a lot.
That's
I'm
wonderful.
not going to thank you. Yeah, I'm not going to discuss the other habits, not habits, but techniques that I use.
Oh yeah.
Alcohol and
Hey, you know what? Whatever gets
cigars,
you
which
through
I
the
try.
day sometime, right? Oh, yes. My dad loves a good cigar. All right. So
Yeah,
something I wanted to talk about, because you had talked about how you just started this job, and this is something
right.
that the question really resonated for me. We wanted to ask you, as a neurodivergent person, have you had difficulty in obtaining or maintaining steady employment throughout your life? And do you think that this is a common problem among neurodivergent people? I know my experience, but I want to hear from you.
Yes, and I have seen. I was doing some research, and I've seen the statistics. It's a very large percentage of adults that are on the spectrum that have trouble locating and maintaining employment. I have a son. I have two sons. One was diagnosed when he was younger, and we got treatment. One has never really been formally diagnosed. He's having one heck of a time keeping. Now my situation, because we opened the tutoring center so long ago, it's nonprofit, so we don't always make a lot of money. So I've always had to do other things. I work for temp agencies a lot. That was helpful because I was never there in one place for very long, so it gave me a chance to move on when the situation wasn't working. The few times that I've tried to do a 9 to 5 type job that I was on every day, it was okay for a while, but things happen. I'm really hoping with all the things that I know now, this one will be better because I really like it. I'd like to stay here a while. I won't tell my age, but I'm getting closer to retirement age. I really only want to keep this job about 5 years because I've had my career and I'm kind of tired, ready to transition. And also an author, so I would love to spend more in a blogger. So I love to spend more time writing and blogging than having to work on lesson plans and all this other stuff on the weekend. So that's because I had in my mind when I first started as this daily substitute, because I was off on Fridays, I was going to do all my writing stuff on Fridays. So now that I'm working 5 days a week, that's not happening. And I'm on Saturday and Sunday. Huge football fan, so football season started. So yeah, I don't know how much writing is going to get done on the weekends unless I wake up in the middle of the night and decide to do it. So
Oh yeah.
that's a challenge. That's a challenge I've got to work on. So yeah.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I mean, so like I've been very, very late in life to kind of the neurodivergent tent, right? I didn't get diagnosed with bipolar disorder until about 2 years ago, and I'm 36. And so, I had a long history, like a long career track record of, not necessarily going from job to job, but like I know this is the longest I've ever worked for one company, right? Like I've been with Power to Fly for almost 3.5 years now. And it was
Okay.
huge, right? It was massive for me to sit back and realize like, oh, wait, I've been here longer than any other job I've held.
Right.
And when you look back over it, especially, hindsight is always 2020, but looking backwards and, kind of putting things in context with this diagnosis and now, the kind of understanding that can bring to my past patterns of like, oh yeah, of course, this whole thing happened in your life. You were probably having a manic swing. You were probably in a depressive episode. Like it's kind of bonkers how much clarity that gives you.
Right.
But it also brings that very like new realization that like finding employment is not easy. It's not easy for anyone, but
Right.
you then add these extra layers of either, effects of being neurodivergent, which may or may not even be known by the person, right? I mean, that adds a huge layer of complication to something as already, already so pressure filled as finding and keeping a job.
Right.
I think it's really interesting to learn that it's very widespread within the neurodivergent community.
Yes.
I mean, it's a little disheartening, but it is kind of, at least for me, I don't know about you, I find it very comforting to know that like, I'm not special in that like, I'm not some unique unicorn that has some
Right.
crazy, condition that nobody knows how to treat and whatever. Like I trod a very well-worn path. There have been millions and millions of people with bipolar disorder before me. And so I find comfort in knowing that I'm not some outlier. I
Right.
can, there's a path to follow. There's more guidelines than, things that would be helpful for me now knowing, whereas like the kind of guidelines and assistance that people tried to give me, which was generally aimed for neurotypical people. And now I know why that maybe wasn't as effective or wasn't working. Do you feel the same way? Like as more and
Right.
more is known about being on the spectrum, do you feel like that you have a better understanding of yourself?
Yes, absolutely. And I am working on with my nonprofit to try to offer. I have a program that I call oh gosh, what's the name of my program? Oh, we're not going to worry about that right now. I can't think of it, but it's geared towards 15 to 25-year-olds. And those, when you start to get older, when you are diagnosed at a younger age, the older you get, the less services there are. So I'm working on trying to offer that option to help the older older students and older adults to find services to help them understand. I know when I need a break. So in the position that I'm in now, I have a lot more flexibility. So I can just get off the clock, take a minute, walk away, get a chance to. It's kind of hot outside right now, but even if I need to take a walk, because we're in an area that's kind of not off the beaten path, but there's room where I could actually take a walk if I need to and go outside. So I just walked over to fast food joint the other day, but it gave me a chance to get out. So
Oh yeah. Well, and I mean, this is one of the things that I try and tell people a lot when I'm like, yeah, just get out, take a walk. And they're like, well, it's not nice here, or I don't have like lovely sidewalks, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. Like, even if
yeah,
it's kind of like nasty out, like I'll go outside and just sit in the sun for 5 minutes, because for me, I know that that helps me to reset just as much as the walk would. But I think that's great that you are starting to find these areas where your job is flexible enough because of remote work that you can meet your own needs.
Yeah. Yeah, I need
When
to
you
be
think about like,
able to.
oh, go ahead. Sorry, I
Good.
didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just saying, it's important that that I have an opportunity to. I need. I have to have a job where I have an opportunity to walk away, because if I don't, there's probably going to be issues, because there's points when I need to. For instance, I took my laptop. I have a desktop, but I took my laptop into the break room the other day. Someone was like, "Taking your work to lunch with you?" I was like, "No, not lunch yet. Just needed to get out of that little space I was in and move to a different space." So still on the
Mhm.
clock, but our stuff is synced up. So anything I do on my laptop works on my inputs into the system anyway. So needed
Nice.
to get out of that space and into another space. And that's, you know, how that works. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's good to be able to move if you need to move out of that space and into another space when
Yeah.
it's necessary. So,
Well, and that
go
makes
ahead.
a
You were gonna say,
you make a
yeah.
really
Go
good
ahead.
point there, which is like, this is, even just changing your location from your desk into the, not even changing your location, but like, taking a break, getting mentally out of this, like the physical space you were in is huge. It's super helpful. I find it very useful for myself as well. And it's one of those small changes that isn't difficult to make. And just because it's maybe not what a neurotypical person might do, as their first impulse, doesn't make it bad,
Wrong.
right? It
Right.
doesn't make it not an accommodation that is, valid, or it doesn't make it any less worthwhile of a technique just because it's not something that's in use predominantly within neurotypicals right now. And that's, one of those things we try and highlight to people, right? Is it like for people who are neurodivergent, the workarounds or the accommodations they need are generally not massive, right?
Right.
They're generally smaller things that don't really affect anybody else anyway. And, just because we're not thinking of them immediately as something that a neurotypical person might also need, just because it's a bit off the beaten path doesn't mean it's not hard, it doesn't mean it's any harder to accommodate than something that, might happen to a neurotypical person.
Yeah. I read something on the internet about a poor lady who her employer supervisors knew that she was on the spectrum. All she asked for was a room or something to be able to go to. The poor woman ended up under her desk because they wouldn't give her a space to go into when she needed to. So, yeah, I don't tend to be litigious, but that sounds like an excellent lawsuit for EEOC because all she needed was a space. And I guess I'm assuming she didn't want to go into the bathroom because it's a bathroom. So she
Yeah,
just
just because
needed
you like, oh,
she just needed a space to go to. So she was under her desk. So that's and a lot of people a lot of employers are demanding that people come back to work.
mhm.
Um, well, I mean, I look forward to it. And the type of job I have now, I'm working with kids, so there's no remote with that because that we found out wasn't working very well. The teachers, I have a really good friend I was just talking to this morning. She's a teacher, and she said when they were trying to do the remote learning, it was chaotic because she works with little kids, like they're pre-K, so
Oh
keeping their
man.
attention because they were all over the place, and she's trying to teach them, and yeah, that's
Oh my gosh, it's like you're trying to herd cats at that
not
point, right?
yes. And I know
Mm.
my son, he was older. He's 18. He's graduated in May, but when he was younger and they were trying to do the remote thing, he was like, can't do it because he's also on the spectrum. But do your
Mm.
best. I know it's not ideal, but you have to do this because you have to do this. This is not, we're not being given an option or choice right now. So just, do your best. If you need to take a break, whatever it is you need to do, but we have to do this. I'm sorry, but we have to do this. So
Yeah. Yep, and that's what it takes sometimes. Honestly, I have those conversations with myself all the time. So your son is in very good company there. Like, no, 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 we have to do this. Come on. It's not the way you want to
Yeah,
do it, but we're gonna do it because we have to do this. It's a thing we have to get done.
right.
Now I don't know about you. So I've only been remote for the last like 3.5 years. I went remote in early 2019.
Okay.
Um, I have in my experience, obviously I've only ever been remote with Powerfly, but there have definitely been points in my tenure here where remote wasn't necessarily working for me. Usually it was because like kind of I wasn't doing it in the right way or wasn't setting myself up for success. Have you experienced this in at all when you were working remote? Were there any situations that maybe didn't work out as positively as you want in a remote situation?
Oh yeah. At the time, my sons, we didn't have a separate car, so we were all trying to work with the same car. So sometimes I needed to take them to work or run an errand, and I was having trouble getting back in the allotted amount of time. And the whole purpose behind being remote, I always thought was the amount of flexibility.
Hmm.
So the first position that I had when I was working with this company, I was just writing grants, so there was a lot more flexibility. I didn't have to be sitting in front of a computer. When I got busted down, demoted, whatever you want to call it, to customer service, they expected me to sit in front of the computer with a headset on for like 6 hours and take a break. That does not work for me because I suspect that I also may have, I mean, it's never been formally diagnosed, but I expect that I may also have ADHD. So it's no way I'm going to sit at a computer for 6 hours with a headset on, except for breaks and lunch. So that was not working for me at all. And
No. I mean, there's a lot of neurotypical people that wouldn't work for either. Like that, and you make a very good point, right? Like there are a lot of people either within the neurodiverse community, people on the spectrum, people with already existing diagnoses, and it is so hard in a lot of ways to get to diagnosis or to get to, a level where your mental health care providers are listening to you or are willing to scope out and see if you have multiple diagnoses, because it is very, very common. I have bipolar disorder, uh, uh, anxiety, depression, and ADHD. So those, like, the confluence there like really complicates things. But if you don't have that diagnosis, you don't know, so it's
you
really
don't
hard
know.
to then try and know what you might be needing or what kind of
So
support would
you don't
help.
you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So yeah, if
Yeah,
you
exactly.
don't know, then you can't. But yeah. But see, the only issue with that was I also had the app on my cell phone. So it would be nothing for me to I can switch over, walk around with a different headset, but I was still able to answer the phone. But they were they had problems with that. They said it wasn't the same quality. Personally, I was having problems with the desk phone. Sometimes it wasn't doing what it was supposed to do. So
Yeah.
saying that the answering on my cell phone was an issue was kind of disingenuous to me because I was having some of the same issues with the regular desk phone that I was hooked up to. But like I said, it was interesting, and I did not set out looking for that job. I happened to have a friend who had her own company, so she actually called to ask me for a favor because before COVID, I had a brick and mortar business, and she just wanted
Okay.
to sublease space from us. But I was like, you're about 2 months too late because this was at the beginning of COVID, and I'm like, I had to shut it down because it was just not practical anymore because nobody wanted to come to a location while all this was going on.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, yeah. She was like, well, what are you looking for? I was like, well, I'm looking for something in the same pay range that I was in before. So the initial position that I was offered was as like a consultant type grant writing thing, which was fine because it was remote. I was had a whole lot of freedom. And at some point, we were doing some kind of company restructuring, and I got pushed into a customer service position, which I had done that before, and frankly, really wasn't that good at it. So, from my evaluations that I got, so I knew it was a stretch. But hey, if you're gonna keep it at the same pay rate, fine. So I think that
Well,
became a
yeah.
problem because,
Well, there's a lot of people that have to make career choices based on that, you know. I mean, it's one of those things we talk about, at least on Power to Fly a lot, is that, you know, we have suggestions for, you know, for people if you're trying to transition or if you want to find a role that suits you. But there are a lot of times, and I remember doing this, oh my gosh, constantly through all of my 20s, where I'm taking a job that I know I don't really like, but I need work. I need to do this. I need to figure out a way to be good at the role that I was able to get. Um, when you are thinking in terms of like the accommodation that you had worked out, right, with being on your phone with a headset so that you could be mobile, or, you know, keep moving or something to keep you from getting super distracted, do you think that there are lessons to be learned there for other employers who are trying to best support their employees who are neurodiverse or on the spectrum? Like, do you think that there are other small workarounds like that that would have helped you to be more successful that other employers should know about?
Yeah, if they didn't want me to be on my cell phone, if there was a wireless headset that would connect with the desk phone where I could move around. I mean, my house, it's a decent sized house, but it's not huge. So I could conceivably walk into the kitchen and still pick up the signal. So, or, walk around, at least not just have to be sitting in the seat. So yeah, being able to move around would have been helpful. Yes.
Yeah.
They didn't seem willing to make um any accommodations or workarounds or anything. It was gonna be this way, and this is the way it was gonna be, and you know, so that wasn't working for me. So I ended up leaving. So
Well, which makes a ton of sense, you know, and like, granted, so while we were talking, I just did a really quick Google search because I was very curious and I was pretty sure, like, Bluetooth headsets for PCs, you can get them from like anywhere between like 20 and $50. So like, for a company to not want to make such a small change that would benefit their employee hugely, like, it kind of gives you an idea of, you know, the attitudes or the values of that company, right? I mean, it's got to be very disappointing, but was it at least a little bit interesting or a little bit informative to kind of know where you stood with them?
yes, definitely. I the company also sells office supplies, just like they're like a smaller version of an Office Depot or Staples or an Office Max. So they had suppliers they could have gotten set up that would have made it easier for me to work. And it was a little disheartening and a lot disappointing. I knew this person that ran the company, so I don't know if she went overboard trying to not show me deference or
Yeah.
favoritism, but it kind of went way left or way left or whatever. Because
Well, it makes sense, you know, like
yeah, I kind
these,
of felt
like there might
go
also
ahead.
be like, you know, background, you know, interpersonal stuff going on with the office. Like there's so many different things that can factor into something like this, you know, like needing accommodation and not getting it, that I think it needs to be highlighted that for neurotypical people, when an accommodation is suggested by a neurodiverse person, listen to it. Maybe
Yeah,
give it a second or third thought to try it before you out of hand dismiss and say like, why would that work? You know, asking the person who needs the accommodation is the best way to get accommodation. You know, I remember being a Girl Scout and being told that, you know, you could help people, like help old ladies walk across the street, right? but you didn't just like grab an old lady on a street corner and drag her across the street. You asked if they were trying to, if you, are you
Right.
trying to move your groceries? Do you want some help with that? So it kind of, it's one of those things that begs repeating of, ask the person what they need and then
Right.
listen to it. If it's not workable for budgetary reasons, okay, then maybe there's a compromise there. But the answer isn't just, well, why would you need that? Like you do have, like employers do need to listen to their employees about what they need. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Absolutely. It would have helped.
For sure.
But I mean, ultimately, that wasn't where I was supposed to be, so it's fine. I'm in a different place now, so
Good for
no
you.
stress about it.
Yeah, I've had to take the same attitude for a lot of stuff. Because I was diagnosed so late, there were a lot of very well-intentioned people around me who said things like, well, maybe this is why you left law school. Maybe you should go back, now that you know, and oh, what could you have been doing if you had been diagnosed earlier, blah, 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 all of that stuff. But it's like, I mean, it sounds like you have the same attitude as I do, which is I like where I am.
Yeah,
No?
I wasn't formally ever, yeah, I was never formally diagnosed, but I didn't find out about it till I was in my mid to late 40s because of my son's diagnosis. So,
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Oh my goodness.
so
That had to
I
be
didn't know.
wild.
Yeah, I didn't know. I always knew that I was different from childhood, but I didn't know why. Um, uh, I'll say I'm 56 years old, so we didn't know anything about autism in the 60s and 70s. So, yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. All right. Well, we are just about at time, but Holly, I just want to say thank you so much for meeting with me today, for sitting down. It was really lovely to get to talk to you and learn more about your experience. Is there anything that you want to share with our audience before we leave today? Anything that you want to make sure they remember after today's session ends?
Yes. Personally, I need a lot of feedback. I mean, if there's something that I'm doing, because I just got some feedback from my bosses the other day, which is fine because we're still working through things, but I need to know because with this other job, it was just like one day I'm a grant writer and the next day I'm on customer service. If there's something that you needed me to do that I wasn't doing, I would have needed to know that so that I can make changes. So I definitely need feedback. Let me know if it's something that I'm not doing correctly that we can both work on and fix it, and don't just abruptly dismiss me to a lower or I mean, there's nothing wrong with customer service. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. Please don't come at me because I'm trying to say that that's
No.
a role because some people are really good at it, and
Oh yeah.
that they were made for that. One of my coworkers was the go-to person. She just needed help in her department, but I wasn't the one to be, to do it. So
Yes. No, I'm right there with you.
I'm not that I'm not that guy. But yeah, listen to your people if they are. Give them feedback. Let them know what's going on. Sit down and periodically have a talk. We need to. This is what I need, or this is what we need you to do. That kind of stuff. So yeah,
Mhm. I love it. All right. So
definitely.
you heard it here first from Holly. Advocate for yourself, ask for what you need, and over communicate. Be communicative with, with your supervisor
Right.
or your team, because like that communication aspect is crucial. All right, we are out of time, but Holly, again,
Yes.
thank you so much. This has been wonderful to get to chat with you this morning. And hopefully we will get to do this again soon. It was really, really lovely, learning about you and your journey. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Not a problem. I would love to do this again. I'm gonna have to get on there and sign up to be an ongoing speaker because I would love that.
Yes, absolutely. All right, that's going to close us out for today's session, but I hope that you will take advantage of the many amazing other recordings that you'll get to watch from this month's summit. And hopefully, if this was your first Power to Fly event, you will join us for many more. Thank you so much and have a nice day. Bye, y'all.